Hey, quick question. When you type code and press run, what actually happens? Like, your computer doesn't speak Python, it doesn't speak Java. It speaks ones and zeros. Pure binary. So how does print hello world turn into something a machine actually understands? And why are there dozens of programming languages anyway? Why not just one? Today we're answering all of that. And by the end of this video, you're going to see programming languages completely differently. Not just as tools you use, but as designed systems with history, philosophy, and serious engineering behind them. Let's go. We'll start with where programming languages came from, because the history is genuinely wild, and it explains why languages look the way they do today. Then we'll dig into the core building blocks that almost every language shares. Things like variables, data types, loops, and functions. We'll use Python for all our examples because it's clean and readable. After that, we'll talk about programming paradigms, which is basically a fancy word for different philosophies about how to write programs. Imperative, object-oriented, functional, declarative. What do those actually mean? Then we'll look at how a translator converts your code into machine instructions, compilers, interpreters, parsing, all of that. And finally, we'll peek at object-oriented programming, classes, objects, inheritance, the style that dominates modern software. Okay, let's start at the very beginning. Imagine it's the 1940s. You want to program a computer. The only way to do it is to write raw numbers, literally, something like 156C, etc. That's real machine code. Each number is an instruction. One instruction. You need hundreds of them for even a simple task. And if you make one typo, good luck finding it. This was first-generation programming, machine language. Painful, error-prone, totally unreadable. Then, in the 1940s, someone had a smart idea. What if instead of writing numbers, we used words? LDR5, price, etc. These are called mnemonics, memory aids. Programs called assemblers were written to automatically convert these words into machine code. This was second-generation, assembly language. Big improvement, still painful. The real leap came with third-generation languages, high-level languages like Fortran in the 1950s and COBOL in the 1960s. These let you write something like, assign total cost, the value price, plus shipping charge. And a program called a compiler would translate that into machine code for you. The programmer could think in human terms instead of machine terms. This was revolutionary. So revolutionary that people actually fought against it. The famous computer scientist Grace Hopper demonstrated a compiler that worked in German instead of English, just to prove the point that the programming language was just a layer of translation. People were shocked. They thought computers could only understand English instructions. Here's the big idea, though. Natural languages like English or German evolved organically over centuries. Formal languages like Python or Java are precisely defined by grammar and rules. No ambiguity allowed. Then came something even bigger. The idea that there isn't just one way to program. There are fundamentally different philosophies about how programs should be structured. These are called programming paradigms. Think of a paradigm as a worldview for programming. The imperative paradigm says, tell the computer exactly what to do, step by step. This is the most traditional approach. Python, C, Java, they all have imperative roots. You write a sequence of commands. The computer follows them, like a recipe. Do step 1. Do step 2. Do step 3. Done. The declarative paradigm flips this completely. Instead of saying how to solve the problem, you just describe what the answer looks like. SQL is a great example. You say, "Give me all customers over 30," and the database figures out how to get them. You don't write the loop. You don't manage the data. You just describe what you want. The functional paradigm treats programs like math. Everything is a function. You pipe inputs through functions to get outputs, and you never change data in place. Think of it like a factory assembly line. Each station does one thing and passes the result along. The object-oriented paradigm, which dominates modern software, says the world is made of objects. A bank account is an object. A user is an object. A button on a screen is an object. Each object bundles together its data and the actions it can perform. We'll come back to object-oriented programming in detail later, but for now, just know these paradigms exist and overlap. Python, for instance, supports all four. Okay, let's get practical. Whether you're writing Python, Java, C++, or anything else, almost every language shares the same core building blocks. Let's walk through them. Variables and data types. A variable is a named storage location in memory. When you write Python, age equals 25, you're telling Python, set aside some memory, call it age, and put the value 25 in there. The type of data matters because it tells the computer how to store it and what operations make sense. Common types include integer, whole numbers like 5, -3, 100. Float, decimal numbers like 3.14, 2.718. String, text like hello. Boolean, just true or false. Python figures out types automatically. This is called dynamic typing. Other languages like Java or C++ require you to declare the type up front. Neither approach is better. They're different trade-offs. Beyond simple types, data can have structure, a shape or arrangement. The most common is an array, a block of elements of the same type, arranged in a grid. For example, scores equals 85, 92, 78, 95, 88. Print scores 0 equals #85. Print scores 2 equals #78. You can also have two-dimensional arrays, like a spreadsheet, where you need two indices to locate an element. A literal is a specific hard-coded value in your code, like the 0.08 in item_price times 0.08. The problem with literals is they're invisible. What does 0.08 mean? You have to hunt through the code to figure it out. A constant gives that value a meaningful name. Now, if the sales tax rate changes and you need to update the code, you change it in one place. Much better. Assignment statements. An assignment statement stores a value in a variable. Python. ZD equals x plus y. The right side gets evaluated first, then the result is stored in the variable on the left. Watch out. In Python and most languages, equals doesn't mean equals like in math, it means assign. So x equals x plus 1 is perfectly legal. It adds 1 to whatever x currently holds. Control statements, loops, and branches. This is where programs get interesting. Without control statements, code just runs straight through once. Boring. If-else lets you branch. Different code will execute based on a condition. The program makes a decision at runtime, while loops repeat as long as a condition is true. Great for situations where you don't know how many iterations you'll need. For loops, iterate over a range or collection. The program iterates over a range or collection a fixed number of times. Cleaner than a while loop when the count is known. Comments. Comments are notes in your code that the computer ignores. The comments are notes for yourself at a later time, or for another programmer working on the code. The program skips over the comments like they were not there. A great comment explains why you're doing something, not what. The code already shows the what. If it's not obvious why, that's when a comment earns its place. Here's a principle every programmer lives by. Don't repeat yourself. If you find yourself writing the same 10 lines of code in 3 different places, something's wrong. The solution? Functions. A function is a named, reusable block of code. Write the logic once. Call it anywhere. The values you pass in, like Alice, are called actual parameters. The placeholder in the function definition, name, is called a formal parameter. When you call the function, Python substitutes one for the other. Fruitful functions return a value. The return keyword sends a value back to whoever called the function. Now that calculation is reusable everywhere in your program. Scope. Here's a concept that trips up a lot of beginners. Variables declared inside a function are local variables. They only exist inside that function. Once the function ends, they're gone. Global variables exist outside all functions and are accessible everywhere. But overusing them leads to messy, hard-to-debug code. So you've written Python. The computer speaks binary. What happens in between? This is called translation, and it has 3 major steps. Step 1. Lexical analysis scanning. The translator reads your source code and breaks it into tokens, the meaningful units of the language. Words, numbers, operators, punctuation. It's like a sentence being broken into individual words before you can understand it. Step 2. Parsing syntax analysis. Now the translator checks whether those tokens form legal statements according to the language's grammar. Think of grammar like the rules of a sentence. The cat sat on the mat follows English grammar. Sat mat the cat on doesn't. Programming languages have precise grammars called syntax diagrams. If your code violates the grammar, missing bracket, misspelled keyword, the parser throws an error right here. The parser builds a parse tree, a tree structure showing exactly how each statement is composed. Step 3. Code generation semantic analysis. If the grammar checks out, the translator creates the actual meaning, the executable code. It converts your high-level statements into machine instructions. Modern compilers often create an intermediate language first, like Java's bytecode, which can then be run on any machine. That's why Java is write once, run anywhere. Now, compilers versus interpreters. What's the difference? A compiler translates your entire program into machine code once. After that, running the program requires no translation. It's fast. An interpreter translates and executes your code one line at a time, every time you run it. Python is interpreted. It's more flexible, but can be slower for intensive tasks. The good news: for most programs you'll ever write, this difference is invisible. All right, let's talk about the paradigm that runs most of the software you use every day. Object-oriented programming. OOP. The core idea is simple. Instead of writing a program as a sequence of instructions, you model it as a collection of objects that interact. Each object has data, called instance variables, behaviors, called methods. Let's build an example. Imagine a simple game where you control lasers that defend Earth from meteors. Each laser has remaining power and can turn left, turn right, or fire. This is a class. Think of it as a template or blueprint. Now let's create actual lasers from this blueprint. Each of these is an instance, a real object built from the class template. Laser 1, Laser 2, and Laser 3 are all separate objects with their own remaining underscore power. To make a laser fire, the dot notation calls a method on a specific object. Laser 1 dot fire is completely independent of laser 2 dot fire. Now here's where OOP gets really powerful. Inheritance. Suppose you want rechargeable lasers that behave exactly like regular lasers, plus have a recharge ability. You don't need to rewrite everything. Rechargeable laser inherits all the methods and data from laser class. Turn right, turn left, fire, and adds its own recharge method on top. This is how real-world software is built, layering classes on top of each other, reusing code, extending behavior. Two more key terms. Encapsulation, hiding the internal details of an object. The remaining underscore power variable shouldn't be directly changeable from outside. Only the object's own methods should modify it. In Python, we can signal this with a naming convention. Polymorphism. Different objects responding to the same message in different ways. If you have circles, squares, and triangles as objects, you can call .draw on all of them, but each one draws itself differently. Same message, different behavior. Programming languages evolved from raw machine code to assembly to high-level languages, each generation making it easier for humans to express complex ideas without worrying about the hardware. There are four main programming paradigms: imperative, step by step; declarative, describe what you want; functional, everything is a function; and object-oriented, everything is an object. Most modern languages blend several of these. The core building blocks are shared across almost all languages: variables, data types, data structures, constants, assignment statements, control flow, if-else, loops, functions, and comments. Learn these once, and you can read any language. Translation, the process of converting your source code to machine code, happens in 3 steps. Lexical analysis breaks code into tokens, parsing checks the grammar, and code generation produces executable instructions. Object-oriented programming organizes code into classes and objects, with inheritance letting you build new things on top of existing things instead of starting from scratch every time. The biggest takeaway? All programming languages are trying to solve the same problem, making it easier for humans to tell machines what to do. They just take different philosophical approaches to that problem. Pick any language. Learn these concepts deeply, and you'll find that switching to another language later is much easier than you think, because the ideas are the same. Only the spelling changes. If this clicked for you, drop a comment below, especially if you're just getting started with programming. What language are you learning? What's tripping you up? And I'll see you in the next one.